Here we have a quorum, so this meeting of the Waterfront Advisory Committee will come to order. Same. But we can certify on behalf of the citizen to the republic stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The agenda for this meeting has been previously distributed. Any comments or changes anyone would like to offer for the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve? All in favor? Aye. Any minutes from the last meeting, May 4, have been previously distributed. And any comments or corrections? Not as a motion to approve the minutes of May 4. So moved.
Alright, so he made motion and seconded it.
Yeah.
And list me as a refusal.
Yes, I can.
The first item on the discussion agenda is the report on cost estimates for options to address waterfront park issues. And Ms. Barna, will you be presenting?
Indeed. Howdy, John. We meet again. This is intended to close out this phase. This will be phase 2 of the project. So I'm thinking this will be the last time I'll be in front of you, at least in this phase. After this, I believe it goes to RFP, RFQ. There could be some other joker up here in front of you from now on after this. So what we're doing at our team, what we're doing is we're finalizing all this stuff. I've had the first draft and a revision of the alternatives analysis. Some of the tables that you guys have been provided in your packet came from that. Worked on it over the weekend. I'm still assimilating some of the pieces. What we're doing with phase 2 is I want to package everything up nicely and neatly to give it to those gentlemen. So the next consultant that comes in can hit the ground running. Hopefully it's us. So when we left here last time, I could tell that, you know, was some unease because we still didn't know remotely what this may cost, what any of these options may cost. So what we've really done since we met the last time is we've chased down some estimated costs, and then we've also run the alternatives analysis to its conclusion. And I just want to go into a couple of graphics that just kind of show the level of detail that we're able to do at this point to generate the cost information. So we did some very preliminary engineering, and then that went to Quinn, who's a member of our team. They did some cost estimates, and then they actually had their cost estimates vetted by a larger firm that's not even local to the state. So we had a couple of different eyes on the cost estimates, but again, this was just based on, so for a repair option, this is what a repair may look like. You remove and salvage the pavers, you remove the backfill, you remove the deck slab, dredge out underneath, encapsulate all the piles, try to figure out how to laterally brace them, and then put it all back again, right? So what we did is we went in and we tried to assign cost to those big number of steps, right? Same thing down here with option 2, remove and salvage the pavers, demolish everything, install the new seawall, install the new caps and the decks and the slab, so on and so forth. So we took a really complex project with a whole bunch of steps and broke it down in about 7 categories that we could really, at this point, assign some high dollar values to. In this case, I broke it down a little bit more. We were able to get a little deeper into the nitty gritty and say, okay, well, let's assume we're going to use 5 piles per bent and that we're going to get a longer span than we have now. So to get some economy of scale that way. Next picture, again, are the other two options. This is kind of the seawall option. This is graphically one of the reasons why we believe that this one would just be so expensive. If you didn't have a sheet pile out in the front, you would need to have a concrete seawall in the front. That wall would need to be supported by piles. Otherwise, all of this would sink into the mud. So you'd have to remove everything, drive your piles, do all your cofferdamming, your forming, your shoring, and then go back in with your compaction and your geofabric. And we were able to use the data that we've already collected and say, okay, well, how much fill would we need to put back in there? What's a good estimate for the amount of dirt we'd have to dredge? And then how much would we have to bring back in? What's a volume of concrete? Real, not a whole lot of detail, but we did base it off of, the numbers that we have available at this stage of the design. For option 4, and as we go into the cost estimates a little bit more, we know that option 4 is really just, it's any of the other options with more. And so what we've really done with that is just said, look, if all things being equal, we're essentially just going to give you an allowance of, I think we said $3.85 million. If you go with the hybrid option, if you wanted to kind of encapsulate all of the comments, all the public feedback comments that wanted all the bells and whistles and all the other amenities, and you wanted to wrap that all up into one big burrito, we just add $4 million to the price tag. So this is the level of design that we're kind of able to come up with at this point before going really down in the weeds of doing a structural analysis and more soil borings and testing and the like. So if you go to the next slide. So here's where we are in a summary. What we looked at is for the do nothing option, we actually were able to calculate a cost of the do nothing option, or at least estimate a cost of the do nothing option. So this was based on the Beaufort, Port Royal, I forget what tourism study. It's a 22-23 tourism study that said about I think it was $4.7 million between Beaufort and Port Royal annually. We discounted that somewhat to account for the cost that Port Royal would be accounting for. And so we just said that $3.8 million annually over 75 years is what might be lost in revenue over not having the park. So we were able to, in that method, assign a cost to do nothing, which basically by this exercise shows that doing nothing over the cost of 75 years ends up costing about $2 million more than rebuilding the promenade. So again, it's numbers, and it's, there's time value of money considerations and 75 years worth of cost analysis in there. But you go through the analysis, do nothing is about 68 million. Option 1, repairs, somewhere around 80 million. Option 2, complete rebuild, slightly higher elevation is about 66 million. And then the bulkhead option is nearly double that
Well, I
cost.
just want to be sure we're clear on that. So that's today's dollars, right?
That's correct.
Knowing that this will probably be a couple of years before we're going to construction, that investment.
I would think marginally.
So these figures are nothing in the park, basically stopping where the platform is now. So any of the park improvements, redesigns is not in here.
If you're beyond upland of the structure, so beyond the seawall. So right now we have the face of the pier, and then 36 back, we have that seawall that's buried in there that's going to be replaced. Yeah, this is everything from that seawall out and then up, right?
In the option where we fill it in and put a seawall in there, what portion of that 121 million and change is mitigation fees?
I don't even know, was any mitigation even put in there?
But that's in permitting.
Yeah, yeah, we were just looking at raw construction costs. We weren't, yeah, we weren't looking at the mitigation.
May I answer that? Look, BCM or the Corps is not even gonna look at it until we put in a permit application now. Usually we could have a pre-construction meeting or a pre-permitting application, and we could go and discuss something, and we could get some input from them. That's not even a thing they do now. So to ask them, we had this many square feet, you gotta put in an application. That's what we hear that every for the last year now.
That'd be on top of it for the critical line mitigation.
So cost for option 4, if you'll notice option 4, as I said earlier, that was the hybrid. And to account for the additional amenities, we suggested doing the 3.85 million on top of these options, just to account for that inside the park. Give the public all the bells and whistles and everything. What's $4 million among friends? You got the next slide, please. So our formal recommendation to the committee, last time I think we were in here, I asked the committee when you guys wanted to give the recommendation, whether it was going to be before or after we gave our recommendation, and then you guys ended up voting last time. And now us having seen the money and seen all the public comments, this is our formal recommendation to move forward with option 2, which is rebuild the platform that you have now, just at a higher elevation, so that you realize the benefits of having that additional adaptive capacity. And we believe that this design provides the highest level of performance or highest level of certainty with regards to performance, durability, design life, and then the comparable aesthetics. The cost is the lowest, probably going to be the easiest to permit, and it did have the most public support from all of the public comments that we were able to generate. Have there been a substantial amount of public comments that have come on the website since our previous?
No, not since the initial, the initial push there. To my knowledge, it's been a week or so since I've gotten on there, but there were no additional comments at that point.
So as discussed last time we were here, we would have liked to have more public participation, right? We'd like to have 851 comments, not 151 comments or whatever it was, but I think we all agreed that we put forth a good faith effort to try to engage the public through multiple avenues and multiple modes of media. So I think we captured that. If you go to the next slide, this really kind of captures all of it graphically here. When we're going through the alternatives analysis, we were looking at stuff as far as cost, design life, permitting concerns, the amenities involved, coastal resilience, construction duration, and then we weighted those and then came up with a weighted score. And in this one, you kind of see this just another graphical depiction that option 2, rebuilding the wharf, checks all those boxes and ends up having the highest weighted score at the end of the day. So this is, like I said, just kind of bolstering our recommendation. So that's our formal recommendation to the committee. I'll go in the next couple of slides, talk a little bit more about we've been talking to you guys about the adaptive capacity and the elevation changes and what kind of benefits that the city might be able to realize out of that over the life of this project. So the next couple of slides go into that. So in this slide right here, and all of this will go into the alternatives analysis, and it's all explained, and probably better than I'm going to explain it now, but this will all be on the website. But again, we're estimating that based on certain return storm events and certain flood events, that there are potential damages between $1 and $4 million a year that could be realized for different flood events, right? Estimated damage potential. That doesn't mean that it's absolutely going to happen every year. It's just this is a numerical exercise for money looking at what is the potential for damage. Would this occur on these return periods? So we've come up with some estimated damage potential for floods at different elevations. We start to see over in the far column that as you raise the platform, we actually start to get the incremental benefits start to increase, and really between 7 and 8, we start to get the highest of the incremental benefits in there. So between 7 and 8 is where the using this method between 7 and 8, you're going to have the most benefit from flood protection. You will still benefit if you went to elevation 9. It just wouldn't be as a great as an incremental benefit as, say, going from 7 to 8. So in this situation right here, when we were talking about, well, if we raised it 1.5 feet today, that puts you from here to right in the middle of this range, and then plugged in the adaptive capacity to be able to go to 9 in the future. This is a way that just helps to validate that just shows what the potential in savings due to increased resiliency are going to be at each flood level. If you go to the next one, again, this is a estimated benefit cost ratio based on those previous number. This shows the incremental benefits, and this is just an exercise that says if you were to go from elevation 6 to 7, if you were going to raise it 1 foot, that over the course of 75 years, that you would realize for every dollar you spent, you would realize about $3 of benefit. So it really peaks again between this 7 and 8 range, where we were talking about raise it up about 1.5 feet from where it is now, somewhere in 7.5 to 8. You have an incremental benefit cost ratio of about 3.48. So by that metric, for every dollar you spend, you realize about $3.50 of benefit over the course of the project. And so even though these numbers are somewhat abstract, this is a way to illustrate that there are realized benefits other than just, hey, our platform is not going to flood every 4 times a year, 5 times a year, 10 times a year. There are actual economic benefits that can be realized just from not causing damage to other properties, other infrastructure, loss of tourism revenue, and the like. So that's really what this exercise is to show is, yes, there is benefit in raising it, as we have been discussing, and then there's benefit in holding and designing it to be able to raise it even further in the future if sea level keeps trending the way that it's going. So I believe the next slide has our conclusion. So it's time to advance the design of option 2. So that's the rebuild similar to existing, but at a higher elevation. So as I said at the beginning here, I believe the city is going to be working towards that RFQ that will probably come out of the woodwork to chase after it and get to designing and permitting. The alternatives analysis and the end of the flood study are the information that I just went over with you guys, show that we need to target at least an elevation of 8. We should be targeting at least an elevation of 8 to realize right off the rip some of those incremental benefits, and then still have the capacity, design the structure to be able to raise it another foot if we need to in 25, 30 years to make this thing actually a 75-year minimum structure.
What does that do to the cost of it? You're looking to get it back.
So we would project that from elevation 8 to 9, I think was 5 to 10% was what we were estimating to go go from there. Now, that may be a little less than, I don't see it really being more than that. I would think it'd be less than that when you start to get into the actual structural design of it. It could be really significantly less than that. I would see, we're only talking about a foot. So, investigate grant opportunities. That's one of the things that we recommend, and then integrate community feedback and public use enhancements into the final design. So I think that was the goal, kind of one of the goals of the Waterfront Advisory Committee, was to, have a way to get the community feedback and get the community input, public input. So that's where we're at.
I think the committee members will have questions now, but I'd like to say that when it comes to the public comment portion of this agenda, we're going to do what we did at the last meeting, and that is it's going to be an open give and take session, not just a formal public comment. So that any questions that members of the public will have for Mr. Barna, I'm sure he'll be eager to entertain. For that, just to kind of get the ball rolling here, since you're estimating costs based on what I guess I would call a conceptual design at this point. How much contingency is built into these numbers?
I think we had, do you remember?
Things good.
Duncan, I think it was 15 is what we had, but then I think I also put a contingency. I think it was 15% is what we had on the number that you're seeing in here.
And that's consistent across all options.
Yes, it would have been consistent across all of them.
So as design work proceeds and you get closer to construction drawings, would you expect to see that contingency reduce? Percentage contingency?
I think the more you, just in general terms, the more you know about something, the less of a contingency you need. So I would hope that the contingency would go down, but what I would, when this goes to the next phase, a lot of times projects like this have a 30, 60, and 90% review periods, right? Where you do a 30% submittal, you do a 60% submittal, you do a 90% submittal, and then you do a final, or 95% and then a final. I don't know how the city is going to structure that, but a lot of times in that type of delivery, each iteration has an associated engineer's estimate with it, where at each iteration, as the design gets more refined, the cost estimate gets refined right along with it. Presumably, the more you know about the project, the less you would need to have a higher contingency. I think at the end of the day, just for CYA purposes, you're still going to have at least a 10% contingency in there when it goes to bid, I would think.
Right. So do you have, what level of detail in terms of cost buildup do you have with you today?
I have this.
This is it.
Mhm.
Other members of the committee?
No, I just commented, obviously, there is no real design for this project at this point. It still has to go out for proposals. Because we're not asking your firm to design this project, are we, at this point?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So these numbers are based on assessments done locally, based on conditions and information known. The numbers can drastically change, probably up when they go out for proposal, but if it actually gets into a bid situation, you're gonna need a set of documents that are apples and apples, so. Wouldn't it be prudent to have a design based RFP first, based on what we want, get a fixed design in place, and then go out for proposals based to build that particular design and not let it become apples and oranges? I'm asking you just for general conversation with the board.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard yet that sequence of events unfolding. You know, what is the next step? We've gotten information from the group that's done this step so far. We get a $66.5 million cost estimate based on what they know.
I think the record.
I can speak to that a little bit. You would need to begin your engineering, your engineering design, your structural design. You've got to go somewhere. And once you've started to develop some of that, you can start engaging the permit folks, but where you're going to have to advance the design a fair amount, if not have it all the way to completion, before you can even apply for the permits. And I think as far as grants go, the further along you are, the closer you are to shovel ready, the better you're going to be to get that money. So typically that would be the next step, is your preliminary and final structural engineering, and then tied into that is going to be your permitting, and then and then wherever the grants fit in there, whatever type of grant cycle you're trying to fit in, then you try to figure out, okay, well, is there any way that we can fit all of this stuff into this next grant cycle, or is it going to go to the next? Is it going to the next one?
Well, in response to Mike's comment, your recommendation is that this recommendation gets forwarded to city council.
That would be our recommendation from the team. Yes, is the best option for the city is to rebuild with a wharf similar to what is there now, except at a higher elevation.
I think that's that is where we were before.
Yes,
this meeting.
yes.
Whether anything changes as a result of this conversation, I don't know.
May I? Sorry. May I? Sorry, I know it's hard to tell when people are finished, but may I ask a question?
Who is speaking?
Graham Trask?
Graham, would you mind waiting till the public comment period?
Oh, I thought you were letting people interject. My apologies.
We're not there yet. If this committee recommends option 2, having taken into account the cost estimates, what would you expect city council's next move to be?
I'm not a politician, sir. I don't.
Well, would you expect before the last meeting, you said that it would be up to them to authorize staff to issue an RFQ.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what the city is planning on doing. They're planning on issuing an RFQ for the next phase of the project. Yes. Yeah, and so with our recommendation would be, yeah, we would recommend that the city go ahead and move forward to the RFQ phase and procure whoever the next consultant for this work is.
And then the winner of the RFQ would then produce what?
The construction documents for the relieving platform and the permit, and presumably also facilitate any grant effort. So depending on how the next depending on how the city faces the RFQ, if grants are tied into that, or if it's just strictly engineering design, or if it's design, permitting, and grants, it just depends. But the next consultant, whoever, my assumption would be the next consultant who gets the next contract in here is the one that is going to be in front of you guys until there are people walking on the new platform. Okay, they're going to be the guys that are going to be in front of you for the next 5 years.
I guess my question, maybe Scott can answer this, is just being ignorant of the process. Is there I would call it an RFP for the design and engineering, and then another RFP for who's going to come in and build it, or is that all part of?
We can structure it as a hybrid of that.
Yeah.
We can put out an RFP for design, build, or design. Yeah. And then it will be up to the responding firms to submit whatever they think they need to submit. And the design build should be submitted in such a way that the design could be separable from the building, so we can compare apples to apples and get it just.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to.
And I think that's my point, is finding define what we would suggest council making recommendations to
Right.
staff is whether it's better in this economy to go after one small bite since we don't have funding, which would be design phase. Right? And then once you know what the money is, then you, or idea or concept, then you go after the RFP for proposals to actually build what you're offering. Now, there will be changes, I'm sure, once a group is qualified, gets a hold of those documents and makes their own recommendations, but there will be some room in that to understand that. But I don't know if going directly to design build is going to save us any money at this point.
Well, that would be one of the many recommendations that this committee can make, right? I mean, that can be one of the things that you consider. The other is, Bill mentioned the possibility of putting an element in the contract that would help you search for grants and funding. So, I think that would all be part of the recommendation package that you put together for council.
Yeah, I would just say that, number one, I appreciate the work that went into providing a little bit more context and an overview on cost analysis. My understanding based on our last meeting is this body already passed a recommendation for option 2 to council. So this provides a little bit more information. Candidly, where we're at in the process, I'm not really putting too much faith in the cost expectations, just because we've kind of been, I know, and I recognize that did not come from anybody on your team, but there was the initial $100 million number floating around just a month ago. We heard that maybe it looks like more a third of that number. Now we're at 66 million. And I understand that, like I said, where we're at, it's so hard to tell what the cost is actually going to be. And we won't know until we get further along into that design phase. But nothing has changed from my position in regards to what to expect next. I expect on June 9th that council will see the recommendation from this body to move forward with option 2. And hopefully there's some discussion that there will be framework for what an RFQ will be and what that would look like.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think it'd be awful hard to have someone bid on the costs of it, knowing it's 3 years out at this point, so.
And we wanted to have a place to start. We wanted to have a good place to start because of what you had mentioned with there was the 100 and the 30 and then where are we? And everybody was, the same thing. It's like, okay, well, where are we in that range? And we wanted to at least do a good faith effort and really scratch our brains to say, okay, let's try to have a good starting point. So at least when we go pick this up in the design and we start hearing about grant opportunity to start looking into that, we at least have a metric that we're starting with.
And one last note, from a politician standpoint, I would say that what I'm seeing is this is a large project, large cost. And so whatever we can do to make ourselves best financially positioned to absorb this, we'd be better for it.
Sure. And that politician comment was not, that was not meant to be cute or anything. I didn't understand the question, so I'm not.
This is, kind of a piece of sand on the beach, but is the day dock far enough off to be not impacted during all this construction? Besides the ramp, obviously.
For the most part, I would think so. For the most part, what we had spoke about last time when I came in here was because it's a linear project, you would necessarily be able to phase this project when it goes to construction, right? You should start in north to south, south to north, east to west, whatever. We should be able to build and then build and open as we go along. So are there going to be impacts? Yes, sure they are. But for the most part,
Is it far enough away not to be,
yeah,
for all the construction equipment and everything?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say the same thing about the marina?
Oh yeah, the marina's out of the footprint. Marina's out of the footprint.
Here's one last question, and I don't know if I saw it in here, but if and when we move forward with option 2, does that include taking the mud buildup that's currently underneath there out, or not necessarily?
No, you wouldn't want to. No, because that would be dredging, and that would just go to a whole a whole other realm of money, number one, and permitting. And it really wouldn't be necessary to do that. You know, really the only reason it'd be necessary to go in there and dredge is if we're gonna turn it into a ship berth.
Well, I guess I said that, and maybe this is coming from a point of ignorance, but I guess I said that just thinking over the course of its lifetime, if the expectation is 75 years, what will our limit be to investigate the condition of those pilings if we have not only the shoaling that's currently there, but any buildup as time goes on?
So in other words, how do we make sure that in 75 years, we're not getting to the point where we are now, where we've got, it's all shoaled in, you can't even get to it to look at it? I think a lot of that is gonna go away in the design. I think and I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, there's gonna be less obstruction in the water. There's gonna be probably less piling because we're gonna have bigger piling, longer spans. There's probably gonna be less to slow down the water velocity under the platform. I would also encourage not putting back on that fascia panel that's in the front of it. You know, it makes it look like a seawall, but it really slows down. There's no real water flow under there. And that's why there's been such a shoaling issue under there, is that the water velocities just get low. Because there's so many piling, and then you have that big fascia panel that slows everything down. So the water rushes under there, and then it just kind of stops and stagnates. And then all the particles that are in the water, they fall out, and that's what's causing that siltation.
So if there was the same water moving in, moving out, then you wouldn't have the chance for the same.
If it flushed,
flush.
exactly,
Flush,
if it actually flushed through there, I would assume that it will actually clean it out a little bit. Because a lot of times what you have up against a vertical structure like a seawall is it will scour that. It won't allow the deposition of any of those real fine materials right in front of a seawall. Usually they just kind of move on, because there's nothing to restrict their flow,
Correct.
right? It's just a vertical wall.
So, and aesthetics aside, is there any, and this will be all in more of the design phase, but is there any benefit from your perspective to having the fascia?
I don't think so. The only benefit that you really have there is you can't see up underneath it, and there's nobody going up under there to fish up under there.
So aesthetics, and that, yeah, is there good fishing?
It's just aesthetics and maybe partly with safety, you know. The port, I know from a recent dive at the port, which they have all wharfs, same thing, right? And the port up in Charleston, what they have done to keep homeland security, they've gone through and done steel cables to keep people out, because there's a lot of people like to fish up under there. I would not do something like that. So I would consider some type of barrier to keep people out and still allow the tidal flushing action if you can.
Okay, yeah.
Since you don't have all that backfill, it'll be easier to get up under there because it looks like there's a good bit of space between mean low water and where the bottom of the relieving platform will be.
It will look from the water, it could necessarily look completely different from that metric, just because, like you said, we're taking out 6 feet of dirt that's there now. There's just no need for it. That can be air. Right now, we're supporting all that dirt by old piling, and that's why it's in distress. Yeah, it's a good point.
Are we looking?
Is pumping the piling's gonna compromise the integrity of the marina seawall at all?
I don't think so. I highly doubt that. When there's gonna be a massive impact.
Yeah.
When they start, I mean, there's gonna be thousands of massive impacts with the diesel hammer, let's put it that way, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. But yeah, it's gonna be loud for a year, 18 months, 2 years, or whatever. The engineer who designs the next phase will put in their vibration monitoring, I'm sure, because that's one of the things that probably needs to be implemented. Probably some vibration monitoring, some instrumentation on some of the older buildings, maybe over by the marina, maybe on the seawall, whatever, just to make sure that, yeah, the vibration and the pounding all day long for 500 days isn't messing something else up.
And just like you had economic impact for doing nothing, I think there is an economic impact cost. That it's not gonna be a very enjoyable place to be anywhere as near from Bay Street down during that process.
I think it's gonna be pretty invasive.
Yeah.
I think as far as the sound goes, I think the construction footprint is gonna be tight. It's gonna be tight to where it is now. It's not gonna be like the 2006 park project where it was like a bomb went off down there. I mean, that was crazy. It's not gonna be anything like that. But it will be loud.
Your concept, how many piles do you have in Big River?
We were estimating approximately 5 piles of bent with bents at 20-foot centers. Right now, there's 5 piles of bent at 12-foot centers. So we're looking to upsize the piles and spread them out further.
That would be how many total?
Very bad at math without my calculator. So 1,200 divided by 20 times 3,000, is that right?
So more than there is now, actually. There's 570 now.
There's 570 there now.
Yeah, I just rounded it 600.
Okay, so about the same as
Because
what
there's gonna be some batter piles, and that's some of the contingencies that as us contractors, we figured in over and above what the engineers have given us. Make sure that we had enough in there.
Okay.
That's good. Once you start driving them, how many can you drive in a day?
Oh, good pile driver can drive 10.
So we,
You know any of those, Duncan?
I know a couple.
so maybe.
We have a plan. We've went through this long and hard. That number's good. I put many hours in this.
So maybe you're not driving piles for 5 years. Maybe you're driving piles.
So we're gonna drop a lot of them at one time. If we were doing it, if Oakland Marine Construction was doing it.
Over what period of time?
I think it can reasonably be done in 18 months.
With piles?
The piles, the project.
I was just thinking basically about the pounding, how long will
It's gonna
it
be
down?
loud. We are so far away from the back of those buildings. And during the winter time, it's gonna be a lot nicer because we're gonna have northeast winds. So it's gonna keep that sound away. The vibration monitoring is definitely gonna be necessary at the marina seawall. That is a very valid concern. And when we get closer to that, but still, when we're 100 feet away from it, that impact is not gonna go through there. I mean, the dynamic monitoring we did over the years and our PDCA chapters, we looked at this, the dynamics of it. 100 feet away, you will not get that vibration that actually breaks walls and breaks windows and shatters foundations. And especially out there, the limestone is so deep, it's down above it, there's absolutely nothing. So we'll be driving into the limestone that's down there. So all of that vibration is 30 feet below the top of the existing Waterfront Park right now. But that's where it's going to be vibrating at that deep. But as we get closer to the marina, that wall there, that is a consideration, and we have to take into account when we get to that point. Because it's old, it's 50 years old. It's just like all the rest of it. It's already got cracks in it, the face of it.
So if you drove these 600 miles as efficiently as possible in as compressed a period as you could.
Correct.
I'm just trying to think about what the city needs to do in terms of advising downtown business people, how long they're gonna have to listen to the bang, bang, bang. How long would that be?
A good year. A year.
Every day for a year?
5 days a week. And I would definitely, if we were building, if our team, which I think we're the best team to design and build it and get it done, and I think the RFP ought to be a design build. That's my opinion. Whomever gets it. I think that's going to be the most efficient way for the city to save money and to get it moving forward as quickly as possible. I think the permitting phase ought to be the first thing you jump into. I mean, as soon as it's issued, there ought to be surveys done, there ought to be permits, start
putting them out and getting them to the Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Coastal Management of South Carolina.
Okay, how much work needs to be done to get the permit ready? How much administrative work? I mean, do we have to have a full set of plans?
We need a lot of lines on paper.
Hey, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because the question really goes down to if you do an RFP for design only, because we don't have funding.
No, I think you're spinning your wheels.
Well, that's, I'm asking the question.
We've been spinning our wheels a lot for the last year.
Yeah, I
We're
don't.
not getting any traction and getting anything done. The RFP needs to go out. You need to permit it, design it, and build it.
Well, you see,
And
you
get them-
didn't quite answer me.
Yeah.
Do you need the design done before you get the permit?
Not a full design, not a structural design.
Okay,
We need a surveyed design. We need lines on the paper. We need to know how much further channel we're gonna go, which we already know. We already know how far back we're gonna go. We have some proprietary things that we have come up with that we have to discuss if we were the team to get it in the permitting phase, just to be honest with you. And it's proprietary. We're not gonna talk about it here. So yes, the permitting could get off the ground, I think realistically, within less than 3 months.
that's if a firm was chosen
If it
through
was
some
us to do it.
process
If it was
to
us.
start the design work, you'd get to a certain level of design work to get to permitting, immediately go to permitting while the rest of the design phase is unfolding. Engineering gets completed.
Right.
In the meantime, the numbers haven't been sharpened yet. How's the city, how
I
do you
think
get to that
that,
point?
that happens during the design, just like what Bill said. What we know about the piles, we know about the concrete, the building part and replacing the waterfront part that's there is actually the easy part. You know, that's just engineering and construction. The hard part is what's going to happen to staff is what do we want it to look like? You know, and that can be worked on way, you know, a year into the project or ongoing from the very beginning to know what you want. Like we had pictures, planners up there, how far back you want, where you want the benches. There's so many questions and we put in there like the stormwater. You know, do you want to do the stormwater now or come back later and spend twice the money, you know, or do it now and prepare for it? Those are the things that we really need to look at when we start designing it. Because the whole park, we still got a basin in there. We're going to lift it up and it needs to be at 9-foot elevation. That's where it needs to be. That price, it's not going to change one iota that from 8 foot to 9 foot. It's going to make construction easier. It's going to be more out of the tidal zone. All of our forming, everything we need to do in construction, it's better than that. Plus, the taxpayer gets a better product because we keep it out of the tidal zone. And the only thing that changes is a couple of steps on the backside to get up to it from the park. But the 9-foot elevation is the elevation of the inside of the promenade there, the building. I mean, that's 9 foot already.
Right.
So all that blends right together. And the other side's already tore up. So while we're doing it, just raise that up. And it all blends. Then the only thing you got to deal with is the hole in the middle of in the front of the stage.
So your recommendation is to go to design, RFP for design build and not go to a engineering design phase and then request for.
I think you'll add a year onto it. Easily. And I don't think you'll get the bang for the buck.
Well, we need to hear that because obviously council's gonna have to.
Absolutely.
That's some information.
I want to answer those questions tonight for you.
Yeah, my only concern is not having a funding stream and then we're trying to offer a contract for design build and then.
One of the other things that's most important also is getting the team that we can go and find money. That's one of the biggest things right now. Some of my colleagues in the business is finding the money first so we can go build something. And it seems like that's what more municipalities, cities, counties, and states are asking us to do. Go find the money so we can build it.
And we need that first.
That is more and more part of
So
our
that's
construction.
obviously part of the RFP, not only to award the contract to somebody that will find the money and do
And
the
that's what we
design.
need, absolutely, and our team can do that. That's what we have already been looking at.
So Bill, I think you brought up a couple good points. One, if we have to raise things up in the park to get to the platform, I think it'd be crazy not to put, if it does flood, not putting stormwater drainage in there, because I mean, I think it'd be impossible to go back through the seawall afterwards. So is that kind of in the stew, that 3.8 million, just rough estimate to do all that in the park?
I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Duncan, but I think that 385 was just for some of those other amenities we had. How much did we look at the storm water? Did we?
We added that, we had $1 million for the utilities, stormwater, we put another $2 million.
That's right. We've had $2
in
million
our
on that.
budget.
Yeah.
Just for the stormwater,
Yeah.
because you gotta remember, we've got to fix where they left off to the bulkhead. The project is going on right
I
now.
forgot about, yeah, so on all of the options that we had, and I apologize because there's so many, I've seen so many tables over the last week. I'm trying to remember all of them. Across the board, on all those options, we did have some of those hard costs baked, or some of the soft costs baked in, where I said that there's $1 million for utilities and just like $2 million for stormwater.
And when we talk about utilities, we put that in number because, or you gonna want to run a sewage line down there, or pump out, if in the future you do put the boats back there. So we want to give you all these numbers that you would have to go to council with. The landscape and the hardscape, another $2 million for whatever we have to do right at the back of the promenade, the waterfront park, and how far do we have to come in? Because that's one of the things, we have to go in 10 feet, 20 feet and destroy all that and build all that back. There's a good possibility that we may have to go back 20 feet and destroy all that and have to rebuild it. But there's another possibility also, we may not. And it's going to be, how do we put that new steel sheet pile wall in between? And that's one of the things we've been working on.
Well, I clarify one point for me. Do the cost estimates that we have here include completion of the Charles Street project to the water?
Yes, that's what,
How much?
we put a $2 million in there to do that. And to do some other work inside what I call the hole in front of the stage.
Amphitheater.
Yeah.
Would that be brought up in your opinion?
I don't think you cannot look, it'd be sticking your head in the sand if you did not look at that stormwater in there.
No, I understand that. I mean, it's below, it's already, obviously it backs up through those culverts now. So the question is, at the end of the day, would that be proper to go ahead and raise that platform and give us more opportunity for gravity discharge if you're raising the wall up anyways?
Absolutely.
I mean, because we step down now to get into that.
Right. And as you know, when we have the spring tides, they come up through the grade.
No, I know, that's my point.
Right,
It's a bad design in the beginning. The question is, though, at the end of the day, we tell the public, we're gonna leave it the same. Well, it won't really be the same if we take the amphitheater and change the floor of it, right? We bring it up, we're gonna have less steps or more steps or different steps or something.
Right.
But it needs to be a catch basin if that's the lowest part to help you with the final drainage phase of any storm presence, right?
Yes, sir.
You gotta have a low spot somewhere and you don't wanna send it
And
all.
that's the place to have it,
Right.
but we still need to raise everything up around it, and then that comes up also.
Well, that's gonna help with the Scott Street or the Charles Street drainage because, I mean, the problem is they're trying to drain below sea level
Sure.
and it's just not practical, right?
And when there's an event, it's gonna come out the lowest point. That's the way it works.
Mr. O'Quinn, there's 2 points that you made, and I want to get clarification on one, and then I'll comment on another. The one I want to get clarification on, did you say that once we get into the design phase, you would expect us to be far enough along in the design phase to start permitting in about 3 months?
I think so.
Okay. The second point, which I'll comment on, is you said that so far we've been spinning our wheels, And what we don't want to do is add more time onto this project. And so obviously this is outside of my scope, but I'm just going to make this comment. And of course, I could be convinced of taking a different position on this. But one of the things that I know that I will be looking for when we see an RFQ, or however this goes out, is those deadlines of what we expect and when we expect it. Because candidly, I feel like we received the phase one deliverables in whatever it was, August of last year. And I didn't anticipate that it would take us this long to get to the point of providing a recommendation to council on which option we should do. And so I know that this is priority number one for the city, and we need to make sure that we set expectations in that RFQ for this to be a priority for whomever gets the project after that. And if the expectations are feasible enough that we can get to the permitting portion inside 3 months, then we need to be very clear that's exactly what we expect to happen. So.
I agree. Can't do nothing unless you know what you are tasked to do. And that was one of the things this team was not, we waited a long time for having a task of what to do. And once we were told what to do, we got it done. You've got to tell a team, a contractor, an engineer what you want out of them. And we weren't getting that at first. And here in the last few months, we have been tasked and we've been asked to do things and we've got it done. So I think having an option and saying, this is what we want. We want this deck. We want it to be this elevation. We want it to be this wide. And we're looking at our landscaping and everything this way. So we aren't reinventing the wheel oh no, we don't like this. We need to have a direct and a good objective to head for. So on day one, once a contractor and a team is awarded the contract, if it's a design build, however it's put out there, I think going into it and getting the permit should be the first task to get done. The other task that will be happening at the same time is designing the piles, the caps, looking at the weight limits. The other thing, what are we going to put on top of it? Do we still want loading from a vehicle? That's one of the things. We designed it that way so we can put it on there. We went ahead and just went up high enough so we can build it. That's why we went with 10-foot on centers when I bidded it. That's why there's 600 piles underneath it. So we've already taken those steps for the city to design it that way. So it is doable. If decisions are made, guidance is given, and we're told what to do. It can happen.
Just to be fair for the record, I mean, we were waiting months and didn't get anything until April as far as any recommendations on what the options were. So
We read, during that time, we were trying to figure out what options the city wanted. And then we had to have all these groups and the meetings, and we had the talking points. And then finally, we were first tasked with, we wanted these 7 or 8 options we had. And then we came back and we narrowed it down to 4 options. And then we went and had another public meeting, last April, a month ago. Then we had the meeting in May. And this month we've been working on the final, knowing now what we had to do. So for 30 days, we've come up with these numbers in our designs and our work. So,
And fair enough.
it takes time. I understand that. I mean, you're dealing with the public. The public has to have their opinion, and everybody's a taxpayer, so they have the right to do that. Sometimes you gotta make decisions too, and
Well, and look, in less than a year, we found out that there is a major marine facility that has a very scary structural issue, and we condemn that facility, and then we have in the process come up with a whole bunch of options to put back, and have also captured all of the public feedback that we're going to get in that time. So I think in the last year, we've done a heck of a lot of work that needed to be done.
And the work that we've given you is good work. That's why I can stand by these numbers. I think these are good numbers. I think these numbers are something we could really work towards and get it done. All right, are there other questions from members of the committee that comments need to be logged in?
No, but before we go on, just want to make sure, if you guys have any questions that have gone unanswered as of this meeting, you need answers on tonight.
We're not where we're at right now. No, we've got and don't get me wrong, there's nothing to blame or say, that it was driving. It takes time. The process to put all this stuff together.
Well, we gotta love democracy, and that's how it happens.
We do.
So
We said,
just want to make sure you
these
don't
old
leave here
lords.
thinking that we didn't answer a question for you, or we didn't get enough information. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to roll on then to the next,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
You had someone online who wanted to comment.
he's gonna wait until the public comment, which will follow the next agenda. And this actually is good. A good segue from the previous conversation. That is, we wanted a discussion of grant fundraising activities and whether there's a role for this committee in that, if so, what it is. Bill, I think somebody from your team, going from your grant team, was going to help us with this discussion.
Well, so we had a brief meeting with myself and Eric and staff members from JMT just to talk about what grant opportunities may be available. And really what I was trying to facilitate at that meeting was I knew that there's going to be an RFP that comes out. And one of the discussions that I have with Eric is, listen, why don't we have a discussion with JMT, who has a dedicated grant writing staff, to see if does the grant aspect, should that be tied in with the RFP or RFQ? Should it be a separate entity to where the city just says, hey, we're going to go out and find another consultant who's going to go try to find all this money and work with the other team? So we had about a 30-minute conversation to just kind of facilitate that, just to have a discussion about what is out there and what is available. Do you want to really?
We talked through timing, what made the most sense. Does it make sense to have that be part of the RFP, RFQ, to have that grant writer be a part of that team? Do we go out and do that separately? Honestly, it could happen. We could do it either way. I think regardless of where we go, to Duncan's point, we really want to keep the process moving. So as we're identifying where those grant opportunities are, whether that's part of the RFQ that goes out and that person's part of the team from day one or not, we want those two things to go out simultaneously. So we really want to identify what those grant opportunities are. I think the other thing to keep in mind, there's a lot of different opportunities that you're going to see. Sometimes on federal grants, you can't apply for multiple. So you want to go after the grant that gives you the biggest benefit to going through the entire process will get you what that funding looks like. Now, a lot of that's politically driven as well. So we're going to have communication with folks that have inroads into DC and whatnot. But it appears like a BRIC grant probably makes the most sense. That's where we can go after the highest grant dollars to be able to try to make this project happen kind of in one fell swoop. So that's typically a 75-25 type of grant opportunity. With the new administration, what we found out is that's kind of capped right now, at least in this upcoming year, at about $20 million. That's typically not been the case. That has been, you could go up to, I can't remember what they said, some of the larger grant opportunities were like 150 million. So if that number changes, we may be able to get 75% of this project with something like a BRIC grant. Now, we'll also want to investigate some contingencies if for some reason that doesn't work. But really why we need that that grant writer on board is to make sure we're hitting the marks to be able to get the applications in on time so that we're not further delaying the start of construction, that it's going through that process. Because once we apply for that grant, it may take us 6 to 9 months to figure out whether we've gotten it or not. So just to make sure that number one, we have a plan B, and number two, we build in enough time that we can try to streamline the process as much as possible.
And I would imagine there'd be some benefit to having the continuity there of having a grant writer on the team versus outside consulting.
Probably so, probably so.
That was kind of what we were.
And really from the timing perspective to have the one and then have, you know, even from a staff time perspective, to go out and then deal with this whole separate body. And then you're bringing the one consultant on board to try to make the two mesh together, just to create that as one team makes a lot of sense. It's the same thing with like landscape architect. In my mind, you would just have a landscape architect that's just part of the team. That way you're not worried about the structural engineering separate. You're not dealing with the promenade separate from the park pieces. All that's just built into that same team. Right.
So on that metric, we hadn't intended to give you guys any guidance on grants or, and my personal opinion is I think you guys have been valuable in your role and your input that you have given, you know, our team. And so by that metric, I would think that there is a role for you moving forward as this project progresses, but that's just me. You know,
It's kind of a thing where if you think that there's something we can do in the grant area, you'll let us know.
Sure.
Otherwise, it seems to me like this is an executive type function that ought to be, or contractor function that ought to be performed by people who are integrated into the.
I think that's where a lot of it is. And what Eric was saying, I think a lot of it is who you know, like, and that's really where, hey, all of us can work together is who's got the best political connections when we start chasing this money. And that's the real reality of it is who's got the better Rolodex. Not that those exist anymore, but y'all know what I mean.
Okay, well, at this point, this brings us to the public comment period, and as I said earlier, this will be an open exchange, so any member of the public who wants to engage comments or questions, be the time to do it. Please state your name and Trask, would you like to go, excuse me, Beach.
Well, I got a couple of things. And I really respect Lincoln a lot, but I would never do a project like this on a design build. It's just too important to do that. I've seen design builds really flop. And that's kind of what I laugh.
Could you say more about that?
Well, design build is when you hire a contractor to come in here and design it and build it. And a lot of times they're not looking at the big picture of a great design. Not to, I mean, we already have a great design, but I've just seen too many contractors not saying anything.
I understand what you're saying.
Who take advantage of that opportunity on the tail end, especially when they start asking for more money on things that, it's just not good. On a $66 million project where there's gonna be money just all over the place, intertwined with all different things. Where what happens, and you don't ever get a good set of documents, what happens is you end up with not the best documents to the eye, the best quality firm who would produce a, you know, a 200-page set of documents and some specifications that protects the city more than a design build contract. That's what happens. If you get a contractor, I mean, you get Fox watching the hen house in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And a good quality designer. And I've been on a lot of those project teams that, you know, knows what to look out for, knows ask the right questions. RFQ would be the best way to do this project. And I would suggest that if this committee can get any kind of background breakdown of any kind of cost, that you're willing to give up, so they can have it for their records to come up with 120 million or 66 million.
That'll be in the final. That's given to the city.
The other thing is, I don't agree with Duncan either, I'm sorry. Duncan's one of my favorite people. But we waited a year and we got 4 boards that's got 4 options on it. And I don't think there's anything groundbreaking in those options that I see that could have been presented a year ago. And the wharf plan, you know, all the options aren't really groundbreaking, they're just what you would come up with. You say, well, what possibly could happen in this park? And I know we waited for some public comment, but I mean, I just think we can get a lot of bang for our buck after waiting here for 4 boards. The renderings on them, and most of the renderings were of the existing conditions of the park.
You got a whole lot more now, man.
I know there's
I got a whole lot more
just
now.
some cross sections. The other thing I did is I did something that I mentioned in the last meeting. So just what might be another possibility. And the other thing. And this is a sketch process of, what I'm concerned about on this wharf plan is that you've got a 36, and that's what that top sheet is option 2. You got a 15-foot wide promenade, you got a 36-foot overall platform right now that goes to an existing wall. If that wall stays in place and you build a new wall beyond that wall, you're adding another 15 feet at least to build a new wall. So instead of a 36-foot platform, you got more of like a 50-foot platform. In my opinion, unless I'm reading something wrong.
That sheet pile is 8 inches thick, so your 15-foot would be more like 2 feet, maybe.
The wall?
Correct. Correct. That's a driven sheet pile. That's a 6-inch sheet pile panel. 6-inch wide sheet pile panel that goes down. So the new wall would be.
That far behind that?
Yeah, it's gonna be between, what we had proposed was between the existing wall and the first set of piles.
It's actually less.
Yeah.
You've got a spread footing in here. It's sheet pile. It's concrete sheet pile. It's 6 inches thick. Vertical's 40 foot long or something. But I see what you're saying.
But you're gonna, I mean, in your plan, you showed the new walls beyond that wall, on the landward side of that wall.
But there's on either side of the existing concrete sheet pile wall. The dimension, the depth of that wall is not in this
It's not that,
depiction.
yeah.
No, the depth of that wall's 6 inches.
So you're still gonna build a new wall.
But utilizing the sheet pile system that intentionally does not have much distance in the X direction or horizontal direction.
And my main concern is that 36-foot line is only 8 feet from the column of the pavilion.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
We measured it. No, it wasn't where the fence is. That's 36 feet back.
I know, it's 36 feet, there's the fence, and then the column for the pavilion is like 8 feet
From the fence.
from the fence. So I'm saying I'm worried that the pavilion's gonna get torn down.
That's what I brought up earlier. Are we going to be 20 feet back
or, you know, where we're gonna build that wall. Cause I've got all of the old plans, the old pictures, and, you know, I know how it's built. Yeah, I mean, those are concerns, those are legitimate concerns.
Yeah, but I haven't heard anybody bring those up.
That comes out in the design. That is nitty gritty minutia that is so far down that little rabbit hole that it's months away from even looking
I
at
think you should know whether that pavilion is gonna be coming down or not, or the restroom buildings down by the playground. That
yes.
36-foot wall is almost in that building now.
Oh, all the bathrooms gotta come out. Absolutely. That's all in the 36 feet. It's sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just as long as everybody's aware of that. My other page, the other page is just a combination of option 2 and option 3 or 4, whatever it was, where you have a relieving platform and then a wall that's further in, much further in, not as high, a concrete wall. And then every 75 or 60 years, you won't have to rip out 40, 50 something odd feet of a platform to rebuild it. That means all the trees and all the structures.
That's why it wasn't recommended. Yeah, it's not a good option,
Because
building the wall for just what you just said.
building the wall.
Yeah. The expense of it, and then all the soil. Someone asked about the silt that's underneath there. Well, when the wall was, all that was built, it was 30 feet deep right there. You know, and all of that, once that relieving platform, which, I mean, I have all of these pictures, I don't know if anybody's seen them, but how it's built, it just blocked all the water flow.
Right.
And that's what all the silt's from. Once we demo all that and remove that and build it up above that grade, that water's gonna wash that out. That's why that bulkhead in the back has gotta be so substantial. Because I think it's gonna go back down, it's gonna be 30 foot of exposure.
But you don't think building a new wall in front of the existing wall?
How you gonna tie it back? How big a sheet pile, I mean, you ain't gonna do it with sheet pile, you gonna have to do it with concrete.
Yeah, you would.
And you'd have to coffer dam it to build it.
And you'd have to support it on piles,
I
or it's gonna
mean-
sink in the mud.
You think that's gonna be cheaper than the other alternative?
I just don't want it to be torn out every 60, 70 years.
What's that?
The platform, if it has to be replaced,
Why would it have to be replaced?
or you've been told that it has to be replaced.
Well, I mean, under today, everything, bridges, concrete, 50 to 60 years, that's been its lifespan. We're talking about making a lifespan of 75 to possibly 100. I mean, some of the things that I looked at was fiberglass reinforced rods. We looked at galvanized coated rods. I didn't look at those things, but the fiberglass is what is priced in all of this. You know, good admixtures, and I want cast in place. I don't want to use parts and pieces, because that's one of the reasons all of that is failing. Because they put, you know, prefab, pre-stressed parts and pieces with grout in between it. That's why the whole thing started leaking, and the big 20 years ago, it was all rebuilt, and now those same cracks migrate on down and they move in other places. So, you know, building the bulkhead in the front is just going to be so terribly expensive. But building a platform that you can get up underneath and look at the piles. But if you have the piles that are designed in nowadays standards, especially the Florida DOT standards, with all, I mean, they even have stainless steel cables in them you can have put in them and have these piles built. And that's some of the things that we were building into this as a resilient project, to build these that you would not have to work on these piles. And then if you had to do something in 75 years from now, you could get underneath there and jacket them. And, you know, if the concrete started cracking, because that's all will be in quality, you know, QC, that's quality control and things like that. Hopefully that's oversaw in the designs, like you went back and talking about the designs. I don't take offense of what you said, because I agree about a contractor being the lead on it. I think it's more of an engineering firm being the lead on it. and designing this thing with a contractor's help and then bidding. That's the way I look at it, is our team. So when you look at it that way, I think you have more quality control. When the engineer is designing the piles, designing the port in place caps. I think that's how the whole thing needs to be built. When we build a pier, we keep all of those parts and pieces that we have poured in place out of the water. And then if it does get covered with salt water during storm events, bigger tides and things like that, we put seals in it. We, put mastics that keep the water from infiltrating into it.
But you don't think this option that has, basically a relieving platform in front of a new concrete wall is a better option than a 40-foot wharf?
Not from an economic standpoint or from a resiliency standpoint. I think it lasts a lot longer. I mean, I can use the example of the Port Authority dock because I'm intimately involved in that. I was crawling underneath it a couple of weeks ago. And from loading all, it's not even spoiled, it's actually exploded piles. They put so much load inside that top of that concrete. And what's happening there is where it's falling, they used this regular rebar. There was no coatings, no anything. That structure was built in 64. So it's over 60 years old. And it's still standing. They got boats on top of it, and we're running a marina bull that weighs 80,000 pounds on top of it. And it has none of the things that we're talking about building at the Waterfront Park. So a 75-year structure right now in designing in today's world is pretty good. I mean, we have no bridges out there, many that are standing over 75, except for in London, England, but they put a lot of maintenance in those things to keep them up. So I still think what I call an elevated platform on top of piles, cast in place, is the best option economically and resiliency.
I'm just concerned that you're gonna lose the elements of.
The aesthetic, it's gonna look different. We can't sit here and change that.
And with the structures going, the pavilion, the buildings,
The other thing that we weigh
it's gonna be a shock.
I understand where you're coming from this now. So I'm tracking with you. Because I know that you're concerned about the look and what the front of it. And I think everybody is. But if we had we could just had a pocketbook that was as deep as they could and we could get all the money, that would be great. But we don't have that. So in the design, that's going to be where the public input is going to come in, and they're going to say, okay, let's put this facade on the front. Now, Bill brought up cables. Nobody here wants to see a bunch of cables. But there can be some kind of structure put up there. The tide's still going to run behind it, and it's going to wash the sediments out. So those are things that we can look into and to change the looks in it. But that can come at a later time because you can design that feature into it. And we can design something that we can put on later. As well as I do, everybody here, you don't like later because it usually doesn't get built. But those are things you can do. But it is going to look different. I mean, there it is. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it would look, we are building a different looking structure from the river. Standing on the waterfront part, it's not going to look, it'll look exactly the same.
Okay.
I mean, it will. I mean, same bollards, same chains, if we're even allowed to do it in today's standards and codes.
It'd be nice to get that pavilion down and make it work for what it's supposed to be. I know Mr. Beast loves that pavilion, but it's a non-functioning no-show right now.
I think we are. We have to make a decision on an option and.
The pavilion in the whole grand scheme of things, I mean, if we bulldoze it and build something new, I mean, you're talking a couple $100,000. Wherever it needs to be built. Okay.
Thank you. Paul Trask, 16 Bellevue Street. I'm going to change the conversation just a little bit, please. on your agenda, you have an executive session scheduled to talk about legal issues. I've given a copy of these remarks. I'm going to read them to you. I've given a copy to Tracy. So if city faces litigation that deserves careful and realistic evaluation, that also pertains quite likely to the timing of getting all this work done. I understand that you may be entering executive session to discuss the status of the litigation. One of the central claims raised by the plaintiff is that the city leased the marina and other waterfront assets in violation of the 1976 Property Management Agreement, which imposed restrictions on the use and disposition of the property associated with the waterfront park. The MA provides that the real property described in Exhibit A in whole or in part, and including any interest therein, shall not be sold, leased, transferred, conveyed, mortgaged without prior written consent. It's a fact that the city leased a portion of the property, at least a portion, covered by this agreement without obtaining such consent. At a minimum, the boat landing falls squarely within the real property. Now, that legal description describes this big piece, which is the main part of the park, and it also describes on a separate plat this piece, which is the boat landing, which I've put right here. It's my understanding that the city asserts as a defense that this piece right connected to the marina is not subject to this agreement. Consider the facts. This agreement describes a project as the construction of approximately 2,000 feet of bulkhead and the creation of about 5 acres of land. PMA states that the project was to be constructed upon the real property described in this document. This document talks about 3.8 acres, more or less, and then a bare fraction of 0.072 acres down here. In order to get to 2,000 feet and 5 acres, you have to include this portion right here. Doesn't make sense otherwise. The marina basin, the bulkhead system, the created land, and related improvements were all developed as a part of the same waterfront project and under the same funding package. So the question is straightforward. Would a judge or a jury conclude that a substantial portion of the very project described in the document, funded as a part of the same undertaking, somehow falls outside the restrictions of that agreement? Reasonable minds may disagree on the ultimate outcome, but the risk to the city is real. City's position is not the only plausible interpretation of the documents. There's a substantial risk that the city could lose in court. So my reason I'm coming here to talk to you is settle this lawsuit. I really believe that the plaintiff would like to settle the lawsuit, and I would urge and encourage you to try to do that. Before committing any additional, we've got a big budget increase for legal costs in our city this year. So before committing any additional taxpayer funds to that effort, I think a recommendation needs to come out of this committee to see what can be done to settle this lawsuit.
Van Fast, are you still with us?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Did I misunderstand what you said, Joe, at the beginning, that it was going to be an open meeting? I'm sorry, or did you say it would be an open but only in public comment? Sorry, it's a little bit difficult for me to understand. Could you just repeat?
Yes. What I said was that when we got to the public comment section of the agenda, that we would treat that as an open free exchange.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you had said it was an open discussion, but my apologies. I had some clarifying questions, if that's okay. So Duncan, you think the project would take 18 months in total? Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I said, yes.
And 600 piles, and you think you can do 3 piles a day? Was that, it would take a year or so, a little less than 3 piles a day over every weekday? Is that, I'm just, these no trick questions. I'm just trying to get my mind around it.
No, a pile driving rig can average about 10 a day.
Oh, so you could do those piles in 60 days. Is that right?
Average, that's a good day.
So, okay. Okay. Well, anyway, the difference between a year and 60 business days is a lot. That's why I'm asking. 60 business days is 3 months. A year is obviously 12. So again, I'm just trying to get an idea as a property owner downtown of kind of, so are you saying it's going to be a year of pile driving?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. And permitting, you think is going to be about 3 months, more or less?
No, we were going to start the permitting within 3 months of getting a new contract to move forward on designing, permitting the project.
Sorry, say that again. I'm sorry.
Within receiving a notice to proceed, it is possible to focus on putting in the permits and getting them ready within 3 months to submit the permits to the Corps of Engineers
Got it.
Coastal Management.
Okay, so it takes 3 months to prepare the permits once you get the go.
Correct. And
Or
that
once.
could take, or where,
Okay.
what design to go with, it could take over a year to get permits.
Right. Okay. And then you think it's going to take 18 months, and that's how you get to your 3 years. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Okay. So the 66 million in cost, that is the cost. That's the cost. What is estimated? Because originally it was 100 million, then I heard 15 or 20 million, and now it's 66 million. But that's the construction cost of 66 million of option 2. Bill?
That's what we're going with. That's what we're looking at. That's the number.
Okay. And the do nothing is an interesting calculation because anchoring people is an interesting way to motivate them. You calculated that how?
That was based on a 2022, 2023 study by the Beaufort and Port Royal, is it Convention Visitors Bureau, and they came up with $1 figure for Beaufort and Port Royal. We took a portion of that, I believe it was 60 or 70% of that number, and said that that's how much that we estimated that was the contributing amount from the city of Beaufort.
So that was the spend, or that was the spend in downtown?
Yeah, that was the
attributed to the water. Attributed to the
yeah,
water.
Yeah,
Attributed
it
to
was
the
like
water.
up to 3.8 million per year is like what a lost opportunity cost would be. Just based on that 2022, 2023 projection or number by the tourism.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And then the marina land, that was done originally when the waterfront was done, correct? As far as you guys know.
Yeah, the seawall that retains all that land there is consistent with the seawall and the rest of the park. So
that was all done at the same time.
Yes, they're all on the same set of plans. Yes.
Got it. That was the project. Okay. I would be quite concerned with design build contract without going out for an RFQ. The first speaker mentioned this, you know, it's a $67 million project. Is it legal just to go, Scott, to directly to a design build for the city for a $67 million project?
If you compete it fairly, yes.
Okay. You meaning compete the whole design build project?
Right.
Okay.
The state of South Carolina, the SCDOT, that's one of their preferred mechanisms. The interchange right now, if you go to Charleston, you cannot not go through the interchange at Main and 17, the $420 million design build.
Okay. Okay.
If I could just comment, I think people are getting wrapped around these terms. These are just different delivery methods for a project. That's all they are. It's not a sole source in any way. There can be hybrids of these. The interchange that Bill is referring to is a design build with a construction manager at risk. So that price, there are safeguards. You pay for it, the consumer, for the contractor to be able to do any construction management at risk. But these are merely just, you know, your comments are appreciated. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that it's just a delivery method of the project versus a traditional, quote unquote, there's nothing traditional about it, design, bid, build. People think that's more traditional. It's
Okay,
not.
got it. So what you're saying, and I think that's important, is that the project's going to be bid out in a competitive way. It just may be it may be bid out using one delivery mechanism versus another. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's correct. It will be a competitive solicitation for all of the services offered. It has to be a legal solicitation, right?
Okay. The funding, what do you guys see as the obstacles to moving forward? Because you didn't talk about that. What are the obstacles that are there? What do you see as the I mean, what are the obstacles?
Permitting is always our first hurdle. And
Okay.
looking at the option 2 versus going back to Mr. Beach's wanting the wall, which, you know, that would be a down and dirty, easy, not easy way to build it. But if we could do that, one of the things that we know, trying to cross a hurdle to fill in all of that where BCM has already said that that's 36 foot of wetland underneath it. That is going to be a huge hurdle to cross to talk them into, and the Corps of Engineers, without a huge number of mitigation credits from somewhere. So building a platform elevated, not increasing the footprint of it and not going as far channelward is going to be hopefully not as difficult to get it permitted. That's the goal. And that's why
Understood.
that is one of the main reasons, I wouldn't say the main reason, but one of the top reasons that makes option 2 the better method.
It reduces obstacles from the beginning.
Yes, that was
Got it.
That was one of the bigger deciding factors. That cost.
What are there any other obstacles?
There's
This is a little
obstacles.
bit of a loaded question, so I'm looking for the answer.
I think the other obstacles are cost. The other obstacle is going to be, we know that there's limestone down there. We know that after you get through 30, 40 feet of mud, there's going to be rock. And we got to figure out how to get the piling either sitting on or through or somewhere. And then there's going to be drainage. When is drainage not an issue? Drainage it's going to continue to be a challenge. So there's going to be all kinds of little challenges and hurdles along the way. And I mean, that's why it's going to be necessary to stick with this multidisciplinary team, or a multidisciplinary team, right? Where you've got your drainage, your structural, your geotech, your landscape architect, and you've got a team that's able to address all those little discrete elements that are all individual, but they all tie into the greater part. So there's going to be thousands of little bumps and hurdles, I imagine, throughout the design process, but that's why you pay a consultant a whole bunch of money to figure it out.
Right. So with the design build delivery mechanism, is that do you do that before you permit? I guess you do, because you have to know what you're going to build. Is that right, Duncan?
Well, the permitting is a footprint of where.
So we could start that arguably tomorrow.
That, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was saying.
Right.
Within months, all of those, we should be able to put forth an application and get an application put in.
Right. And then that is round number thumbs up. What's it cost to do that?
Build it.
I mean,
The permit.
yeah, permit. I mean, just thumbs up.
Oh, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars.
Six
I-
figures,
yeah.
below 6 figures.
Right. Okay. So that really could start immediately, and irrespective of who you go with, that you just do that, right? I think.
Yes.
I think there are a couple other obstacles. I said it was a loaded question. It is a little bit. You got to get the funding ultimately, and I think you're going to struggle to get the funding, honestly, unless the thing that Paul Trask addressed is addressed. And I know you guys are going into executive session right now. And I just wanted for you guys to hear it from the horse's mouth that I asked my attorney to connect with the city to press for early mediation. And I hope that that's why you guys are going into executive session. And I hope that you guys will agree to that, because I think there is significant overlap in where everybody stands. And I don't think there's much reason to continue fighting. I have heard, however, that some people think that it might be good to renew a nunc-pro-tunc. That would be an escalation. So I wanted you guys to know that I'm committed, and I know Protect Beaufort is committed to try to solve this. And I hope that by me saying that whatever is communicated in executive session, you have heard it from me about my intention. Thank you very much. You guys have a great executive session.
Are there any other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. I'm Rob Cahill, 608 Water Street. Graham, thank you very much. Paul, thank you. I have 3 preliminary comments before my main comments. I hope you all reflect on what both those gentlemen say. Different voices, different perspectives, but essentially the same larger meta message. Second, thank you for clarifying some terms. I'm a systems engineer by background. It seems to me in conversations with the public, you're often holding different parts of the same elephant. Someone's holding the trunk, the legs, the torso, whatever. There's no communication. There's no communication. Words are exchanged, which we believe, with a different view. Related to that, metaphorically, and people have been dealing with the public for 50 years. This is not new. And the best description I've heard is like running a 100-yard dash and giving yourself an appendectomy at the same time. It is not pretty. And it's hard, it's challenging, it seems like you're always starting again, but it's a real challenge. My 3 comments. 1, this is a placeholder for the future. I hope that one of your recommendations includes committing to conducting an after-action review when this gets to a finishing line. What is an after-action review? It's the best practices now. The US Army started this over 20 years ago. It's not trying to attach blame, it's essentially looking at some very basic questions. What do we intend to do? What happened? Yada, yada, yada. I've heard it said more than once. Waste, I don't think time is ever wasted, but it's misspent. We're not hardly in a different place after a whole blank, blank, blank year. Now, there's gotta be accountability attached to that somewhere. This is not the time to do it. We're still running this dash. But use this after action and find out what can we learn from this that we can project moving forward. Second, depending on our point of view, what I'm gonna say next is good news and bad news. The good news is that I'm gonna be absent from other commitments for the next 4 months. The bad news, I'm still scratching. What am I scratching? It's Langston Hughes. I said at the last 2 meetings of the council, with some passion, I hope. I know that my itch is not your itch. But I'm gonna keep scratching until my itch becomes your itch. What is my itch? After being gone for 2 weeks, I went down to the waterfront last night. You know, the signs are still up, no trespassing, prime real estate. You sit on the bench, the first eyes you see are a sign, no trespassing. Right there, right in eyesight. Please, we have way too many signs there. I think people got the drift. Yes, the sign, the fencing is an improvement, but the location, I can't say what I really think about it. And then you've got great centerpiece of the name of the fence company. What do they do to deserve this? Oh, get it out of my line of sight. I'll be back in 4 months and I'm gonna check and I'm gonna keep scratching. Last, please bring the swings back. Put them back up. That's an iconic feature of the vibe of Beaufort. I go down there almost 5, 6 times a week and I see people to come back and they know, they already have a memory of this green swings. My first week I was there, a gentleman next to me on a adjacent swing is saying, Rich, every time it opens, I'm late for a meeting, yada, yada, yada. The swing next to me, this 6-year-old girl says, he's not ready for Beaufort. So much, right? This is not the place for type A's if they haven't gone past the type A. She was so right. And he's probably still arguing about the bridge that opens up. I'm there on a bicycle, I love it. I got a bird's eye view of the waterfront from there, and I don't care if it's in the rain or not. So, thank you for listening to my remarks, and I'm going to scratch.
Okay, anyone else? If not, close the public comment section of the meeting. And at this point,
Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we move to executive session, pursuant to Title 30, Chapter 4, Section 70A2 of South Carolina Federal Law, for discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual arrangements and proposed sale or purchase of property, to receipt of legal advice. The legal advice relates to pending, threatened, or potential claim or other matters covered by the attorney-client privilege, settlement of legal claim or the position of the public agency and other adversary situations involving the assertion against the agency of claim, Protect Beaufort Foundation versus the city of Beaufort. Can I get a second?
I'm not allowed a second, but I would like to interject if I could, Mr. Chair. I think there's something that this committee needs to decide this evening. If you want to provide a recommendation to city council on what goes into the RFQ. I see 2 alternatives.
oh, I'm sorry, before adjourning the meeting, the public meeting.
Well, we'll come back in with no action, we can make it then, but.
Well, I don't see it on the agenda after the public comment, so I just thought I'd throw it in there. So I see 2 alternatives. One is, you can agree on what those specifications, parameters, whatever you want to call them, details would be in the resolution, and you would trust staff to draft those and present them to council on June 9th. Or the other alternative is, you can agree on the resolution details and then approve a draft of the resolution at your next meeting. Your next meeting is July 6th. The problem with that is that the council meeting is the following day, July 7th. That's not enough time to get that on the agenda. So if you choose alternative 2, that means council will see the resolution that you recommended in August. So I'm just pointing that out to gauge, what's the preference of the committee going forward.
I think the preference is not that.
Okay.
Not wrong. I don't know, I'm curious about our liaison with council and have to say, but my thought was that I don't think we heard anything tonight that's going to change the recommendation we arrived at our last meeting, concerning option 2. I have prepared a transmittal letter that would essentially pull with that recommendation. It's not in the form of resolution.
Right, well, we can do that.
Up to. It's probably more words than.
We can make this an exhibit to resolution and, from it, is comfortable with that. I don't know if you want to address we talked about.
Yeah, there
putting
are some
fundraising
issues that came up tonight that are not addressed.
What's that?
There are some issues that came up tonight.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how to advise you so we can keep moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to consider making recommendations, whether there should be a fundraising component or not in the RFQ that we put out. So these are all details that I think we talked about this evening, but I don't know that we've arrived at any decision on the part of the committee.
We'll be recommending, just so I understand, RFQ, design build, just design build with fundraising. I'm trying to understand what the options are.
You just listed them all. I think you have a good understanding.
Are we still on,
So I guess I don't know enough. I mean, I've done a million RFPs, but
Right.
trying to get money from investors. I mean, I haven't done this before, so.
Couple things I'll say. I think it's a challenge to go to design build when you don't have construction dollars. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is if we go design build, we may exclude ourselves from some of that federal funding because what they want you to do in a lot of those grants is show where you're at in design. Typically, that's not how a design build works. You get a portion of the design done and the construction can start and the design continues to progress as the construction starts. So I think there's a couple of challenges with design build. One of them being that we don't have construction dollars. At this point, we probably don't have all the design dollars that we need. So I think that's a challenge. And then number two, I think it does exclude us from some of those bigger pots of funding because what the feds are looking at is they're looking towards, 60 to 90% design so that something is more shovel ready, not something that's already started construction.
And if you're not happy with the firm and design is horrible, I mean, then you gotta deconstruct it.
I think there's ways that we can make sure that the process moves just like what we're doing right now, that something goes from a recommendation to council to getting an RFQ out. I think we can do the same thing from getting close to having 100% design to getting it advertised to, again, that's assuming that we have funding at that point to be able to move forward with construction. The difference between design and construction is you can piecemeal design together. We can start today with seed money and get to these certain phases of design, 30, 60, 90, then to 100. You can't do that same thing under construction because the assumption is you have all those construction dollars up front before you sign a contract.
I'm just trying to understand the sequencing. Do we have to go RFQ out for a design first and start the permitting process or?
Yeah, you can include, so when we go out with RFQ, and this can be some of the recommendation, but we would look at a team. We would ask for whoever to assemble a team that includes someone that can assist with the structural design, someone that will be a landscape architect, someone that can assist with permitting. That's where you create this team. And that's where an RFQ makes a lot of sense because this is an important enough project. You want the most qualified person or team to be the ones to move forward.
Okay, so we're not talking 3 months from today, we can be, done permitting. If we have the RFQ is X number of months, right?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, realistically, we're going to council. If we go to council on the 9th, we're probably a month and a half or so away from being able to advertise an RFQ.
I mean, I think what Hal said makes a lot of sense also, in that, you know, I think there should be a separation of church and state as far as at this point in the process.
Yeah, and that separates that out. So you get the most qualified person to design, or the team to design it and permit it. And then you get the most qualified, well, typically then when you do the construction side, it's a little bit.
You think it slows down time? I mean, is it a huge delta in timing, or is it really not?
Without having the funding, I don't think we're losing any time anyway. I think it's gonna take us, even when we're looking at like a brick grant, to be able to hit those windows, you do the submittal and then you're just waiting an eternity to hear back. So I don't think we're losing much time in between there. The fastest thing that we can do is to be able to get to beyond 30% plans, so that we have a solid grant document or a grant application to move forward, so that somebody actually chooses it, so that we actually get traction there.
So you need two things: a qualified party to establish a team that can meet the criteria we're looking for within the RFQ.
Yeah.
And then you'll need, second phase of that would have to be the design component. Who's gonna do design? You got a qualified company, or they're the ones that we're asking also qualified to provide the design engineering.
Right,
But we need that to get the permitting,
right,
and we also needed to get the funding.
right,
So you have no choice but to go for RFQ, period,
right.
at this point, just to get out the stable. I mean,
No, that's what I mean. We have to do that. Yeah.
Well, you want the most qualified firms within that team.
no, I get it, but I think you have to have a RFQ to define the team that gives you those pieces, so we don't go backwards. Once you get that team, now can they bid? You said it hadn't been said before, it goes to typically low bid at that point to justify your costs, but
So typically, if someone is chosen, if we're going design, traditional design, bid, build, the person that's on that team would exclude themselves from being able to bid on the construction. Because they have all the inside information. They have all the inside information.
It's gonna be a complication, right?
Well,
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
yeah,
I'm just saying that they got.
no, I think we have to, those two things have to be separated out.
I agree.
I think that's fair. So I guess I'm sure everyone's calling up their favorite congressman or senator right now, or, state representative for, we need money, give us grants. Is that kind of just a waste of time at this point?
It's not a waste of time. There's an education component to it. So that when we get to the part where we realistically can request specific dollars, they're already familiar with the project. I know we already have some requests in for state earmarks that we've had some success on. We don't know the results of that yet. But at the federal level, we kind of need more detail than we have now. We get there by the design process. Cool.
Well, back to your original question, I would personally be in favor of having a staff fair resolution or whatever the document will look like from this committee recommending option 2 with, I'm convinced the design build option is not changed right now.
And I think I don't want to wait another month. I think we need to make these recommendations now,
That's why we're going to have a timeline for it, so that that's an opportunity, So I'm hearing design. Am I hearing a fundraising component?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And permitting, of course.
And I think those expectations of when we expect to see the 30, 60, 90 deliverables, so that we can be very clear up front. This is, within reason, but at least have that factored in, that we expect this to move along at this rate. And I don't know if you build in some kind of financial contingency to that, but I just think that we should be very clear up front with how
And the RFQ.
correct, and how we expect it to move and how fast we expect it.
So I think for the purposes of a resolution for council, we will include, of course, your recommendations. Option 2, fundraising component. We'll also include as exhibits what option 2 is. Are there any other exhibits you think you need to? Anybody? Your letter, maybe?
You can either,
Version of it, or?
either include it verbatim or you lift as appropriate. It literally was a draft that I was going to circulate today, thinking that might be the format.
All right.
For transmitting our recommendation to council, but if the resolution format is more appropriate.
As a member of council, Councilman Scully, what would you recommend? What would be most helpful for council?
Based on all the parts we've seen or based on that one right there?
Based on going forward here for council to get the official designation, yes, we're gonna go for option 2 and we need to start drafting the RFP. Because we'll bring the RFP back to this committee to be sure it's what we talked about.
Well, I'm not gonna answer for you, but it seemed like if I was sitting there, I'd want to state that option 2 is what we're recommending, and we recommend that you start the RFQ process. Period. And then that starts that rolling because they're gonna tell staff, okay, we're either gonna support it or not.
Right.
Right, but you can't tell them anything else because what are you gonna tell them?
Yeah, no, I think the simpler that it is, the
Yeah.
better. So we take the components for option 2, we're presenting and recommending option 2. If we want to throw the high level cost analysis in there, fine. Again, I know that for myself, I'm not really putting too much weight behind that because we've fluctuated so much at this point that I think that what we need to know, big project, costs a lot of money, be as prepared as we can be, but with our understanding, based on the information that we have, this is the most feasible option. This is the recommendation from us.
We will memorialize that in a resolution and bring it to you guys next week. And then after that's approved by council, staff will begin drafting RFQ and we'll bring it the finished draft to this committee to look at.
Will that be done in an executive session with this committee?
I don't know that that is a for executive session. I think. You have any thoughts on that?
I don't think so.
We're just specifying requirements that anybody really can submit for.
And when would that come to, that would come to this body?
To what?
The RFQ.
Yeah, I would want to be sure that this body was good with, because you're the guys who sat around and you made the recommendation to council.
Right.
This is what we want in RFQ, and then council says, okay. They will memorialize that with a resolution saying, we officially choose option 2. This is the type of design that we want, and we want to go out with an RFQ.
But that would delay, would that delay the process? Because if we were to get an RFQ out on June 9th or a little bit after that, opposed to waiting and meeting in July to review it from this body, and then we have to wait until August for council to review that.
Council doesn't really have to review the RFQ. That's not a requirement.
Okay, so council wouldn't have to review it, and it would be more of just this body reviewing it in July and then going.
Just as a cross check going, yeah, this is what we talked about. This is what we asked council to bless.
Okay, so it really wouldn't delay anything.
No, it
They
wouldn't
would
delay
see the
anything, no.
recommendation June 9th,
Yeah.
then the RFQ would be drafted, this
Right.
body would see it in July, and we would expect that to be pushed out mid-July.
And this is not gonna be a simple RFQ. I don't want to speak out of school. You're the engineer, but it's gonna be a little more involved. So it will take some time to draft that RFQ. So it may take until your next meeting to get it done.
Okay.
If
That way we can keep moving forward.
if somehow it pops earlier, we can have a special meeting.
Sure.
To do it.
I just didn't want it to get hung up. This body seeing it, they didn't happen to come to council, but if it doesn't have to, then I think that the timeline with this body seeing it in July, kind of just cross-checking it and then it get pushed out from there is good.
Right, okay. You guys good with that?
That takes care of the question.
Yeah, we can work.
There is a pending motion to go into executive
I
session.
will second your motion.
Thank you.